Namaskar and thanks once again for tuning in to the Economic Brief, your weekly program on economy-related news from an Indian point of view. On the program, Amravati gets a $504 million development boost as Andhra Pradesh's capital city. Friedrich Merz, he vows to revive the German economy, but analysts warn that diverted Chinese imports from the US could destabilize it further. And Nigeria eyes cocoa dominance as soaring prices fuel profits, but there are new challenges. Before we move on, let's listen to what the Union Cabinet decided recently on an infrastructure project in Andhra Pradesh. The Union Minister for Information and Broadcasting, Ashwini Vaishnav, briefed the media and said the Tirupati-Pakala Katpadi railway line. It's a project which would be completed with an estimated cost of 1,332 crore rupees. That's about $156 million. Let's listen to the minister.
तो ये प्रोजेक्ट आज माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अप्रूव किया। तिरुपति से काटपाड़ी की डबलिंग 1332 करोड़ रुपीस का प्रोजेक्ट है। ये प्रोजेक्ट में 17 मेजर ब्रिजेस हैं और 327 माइनर ब्रिजेस हैं। 7 फ्लाईओवर्स हैं, 30 अंडरपासेस हैं और 104 किलोमीटर की रूट लेंथ है। काफ़ी सारा इस डबलिंग से बहुत सारा जो रोड पे जा रहा था ट्रैफिक, वो ट्रेन की रेल की तरफ शिफ्ट होएगा और शिफ्टिंग से करीब 20 करोड़ किलोग्राम कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड सेव करेंगे, जिससे करीब करीब 1 करोड़ पेड़ लगाने के बराबर ये कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड का सेविंग है। 1 करोड़ ट्रीज लगाने के बराबर ये कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड की सेविंग है। 4 करोड़ लीटर डीजल इससे बचेगा और ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के मॉडल शिफ्ट से 450 करोड़ के आसपास साल के एवरी ईयर आफ्टर ईयर देश की लॉजिस्टिक्स कॉस्ट में कमी आएगी।
Well, that was the Information Broadcasting Minister briefing the media after the cabinet meeting a few days ago. But also, one must remember that he is the Railway Minister, and that was about Andhra Pradesh. And we are going to be talking about Andhra Pradesh, a lot of investment into Andhra Pradesh, particularly into the capital. The capital of Andhra Pradesh is getting a redevelopment boost. Amravati, now the capital project, which had been stalled for some time, is now going to restart with the Prime Minister going to be inaugurating it this month. 4,285 crore rupees, that's about $504 million currently has been pushed into it. Also 750 crore rupees, about $82 million from counterpart funding. So it's going to cost, in fact, the whole project is going to be about 64,721 crore rupees. That's about $8 billion US. And the first phase is expected to be completed by 2028. There are going to be major development projects. They're going to be building the government offices. They're going to be building trunk roads as well as residential areas. And of course, the state government has got funding from the World Bank and the ADB. They're providing additional funding. Apart from that, they're getting funding from, let's move to the next slide, please. After that, they have sought help. Andhra Pradesh had sought help to restart this project. It was a stalled project. The environmental clearances have also been done. That is met with the World Bank and ADB norms. And International Bank for Reconstruction and Development funding has also been part of this project. Apart from that, HUDCO is also providing support for this project. And the Prime Minister is expected to launch this project, to relaunch this project by this month sometime. But let's look at the project. It's going to bring in more than the 64,000 crores that I was talking about. About 1 lakh crore rupees is also expected to come in investments as the project begins to develop. And, it crowds in some sort of investments for infrastructure project. That's how a city is growing. So that will also happen over time. And in fact, the second phase of the Amravati project will start after 2028. And that is to convert it into look for global investments. And, they're expecting investments from Qatar. The government also wants to develop 25 medi-cities across India. One of those Medi cities is going to be in Amravati. That's part of the big plan. The Medi city is going to be in a public-private partnership model. So all these are parts of the plan for creating this new capital city of Amravati. $205 million has already come in as an advance from the World Bank and the ADB. And the next tranche, of course, like any bank that gives out money, will come as and when they see progress. So those progress reports will obviously be coming in, and then after that, further money from the ADB as well as the World Bank and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So, in fact, before we introduce you to our guest on this program and to discuss the Amravati project, let's in fact give you a taste of what's coming up later in the program. You know, the US tariff war with China and its impact on Europe. But here's what the US president is saying about China. He says that China wants to make a deal, but the president there, President Xi, he doesn't know how to do it.
China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. You know, it's one of those things they don't know how quite. They're proud people. And President Xi's a proud man. I know him very well, and they don't know quite how to go about it. Obviously, I would say right now China's not exactly thrilled about signing it. We have a deal with some very good people, some very rich companies that would do a great job with it. But we're going to have to wait to see what's going to happen with China. No, it's on the table very much. I think China's going to want to do it, actually.
Well, we are happy to have with us Professor Manoj Pant. He's a senior economist, visiting professor at Shiv Nadar University, has been an eminent economist for a long time. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Now, Professor Pant, we'll first go to the story that we talked about, which is the capital Amravati and how they're building a new city. Is it possible to plan and build a grand new city, you know, like a mega real estate project? Singapore, in fact, had also participated in the initial plans here.
Yeah, you see, but the difference, the comparison is not very good, because Singapore is a politically cohesive unit. Whereas in this case, we have a situation where in the case of Andhra, there is no political cohesion. Now, if one CM announces the capital and says, I'm going to do something, real estate prices go up, and people talk infrastructure, and the next guy comes and removes it. Then the third guy comes and says, no, this is not going to work. I'll give you another example like this. Uttarakhand once said that we are going to make Garsen the capital. And someone else came and said it won't be. Now it's very clear that Garsen won't be the capital. Now what happens to those who plan their investment, etc. on Garsen? So unless you have political continuity, which only the center has, these things will not work. And I, as an infrastructure guy, private sector, government can do it. Government can create cities and let them fall. It's public money. But I, as a private sector, would think twice about it, because if the other person shifts out, then I'm back to base.
So what's your assessment then of the financial plan? Because I talked about it. They seem to have, currently they have about 4,285 crores coming in from the center. Then the ADB has given them further funding. Over $1 million, $100 million or something has already come in. So we're looking at a significant amount of funding. $205 million, in fact, has already been dispersed by the World Bank and ADB. So how do you think, and then they have this plan of getting in more and more funding as the project goes, you know, exactly like a real estate project. Will it work?
Andhra is correctly a very, very ambitious state. There's no doubt about it. They know they've got to compete very heavily against Hyderabad, right? That's the big thing. And they've really worked hard against, because they are new, right, after the bifurcation of the state. The willingness is there as long as the politicians stop playing personal things. I hope one political party lasts long enough for about 25% of the project to take place, and then it'll carry on. But I do believe the center has a very important role, because the continuity can only take place with the central investment in. So I believe that is crucial to make it. But certainly it will succeed.
Okay.
That's the next place where the real estate is still reasonable, and maybe investors will go there. After all, there's nothing important for investors. Why should they only be in Hyderabad, right? Why not Amravati? As long as it's cheaper. So certainly there's no doubt, there's no problem about the economic success.
Right. As an idea, there's no problem, but you're worried about the continuity.
Politics.
Now the politics,
yes.
indeed. So let's talk about the idea then. You know, should they think about limiting the population size? Because what happens in our cities is that once they start growing, then they just become huge mega cities over a period of time. For a city to, you know, be a city that functions properly, where, you know, all the infrastructure works, it should have an ideal size.
You know, in architects, and now they have software, there's so many software we do this. It's called town planning.
Yes.
You know, you plan that if I'm going to expect to have so much population, I require so much civic things, so much and so on and so forth. But in a democratic country like India, you can't stop the population.
Yes.
If the Amravati remains a desert in the middle, then it'll go the same way as Hyderabad. I don't think you should stop that. I think you should keep responding to population by moving around, around Amravati. Assuming Amravati takes off, that's still not done. I think that's a long way off before that happens, and it takes the next 10 years, but should continuously keep planning. And the crucial part is the connectivity.
Okay.
So look at the difference in NCR. Can you imagine what would happen to Delhi if there was no Gurgaon, if there was no Haryana, if there was no Meerut, no Noida? What would happen to Delhi? It will stop working, correct?
Right. Absolutely.
And you have to let the market allow the population to move. You can't stop and say, I'll limit population. How will you limit population? You can't do it.
Fair enough.
I just keep responding to population. Don't try to limit it.
Final question on Amravati is, should India as a whole, be investing in more greenfield and brownfield cities is this just happening? Is it happening you did mention about what happened to the NCR? That's also one of the cases, that it's, cities are just spreading outwards.
No, that is something which would happen. There's normal economics that cities tend to spread outward. Now, the only problem that's happened in India is developments have only taken place around a few cities. Now, if you look at, if you were able to sometime maybe on Doordarshan and they're available, these GPS photographs of the country, what they call the light. Look at the light emission. You will see a lot of light emission around Delhi in the north, around Bombay in the west, around, let's say, Karnataka and Hyderabad in the south, and nothing in the east.
Okay.
The sad thing is that the east has somehow been, political reasons, has not developed. I think the crucial development future for India lies not in these places, but in the movement of the east. Now it's happening. New ports are coming up in Odisha. So far, we had only Calcutta, the only port. So I think that's what you have to find, that you have to allow population to move where the density of population is lower. Like India has got much lower density of population than the rest of the country. Look at Assam, it's very low. So you've got to sort out the political issues which are very severe in the eastern part for the future development.
True, and there's got to also be an economic reason, like perhaps a port, as you did mention. Well, German conservatives under Friedrich Merz, they clinched a coalition deal with the center-left Social Democrats, aiming to revive the growth in Europe's largest economy, Germany. But, as the global trade war, it threatens a recession. Germany is also concerned about the possible flooding of its markets by China's exports, which have been diverted from the United States. Germany faces its third year of recession, with its economy shrinking by 0.2% in 2024 after a 0.3% drop in 2023. High energy costs, Chinese competition and declining industrial output are key factors. Corporate bankruptcies rose by 25% last year, alongside more consumer bankruptcies. Europe fears an influx of cheap Chinese goods due to US tariffs. EU leaders warn that China's overproduction could disrupt European industries. The concerns are particularly marked in Germany.
China is going to have a tough time exporting its way to continued growth in the economy, which is its standard playbook over the years as the economy weakens.
Trump himself, of course, has said that he's looking to make deals like offering China a rebate on tariffs if they sell him TikTok.
China is actively seeking new markets in response to the steep 125% tariffs imposed by the US on Chinese goods. The tariffs, which have escalated through multiple rounds, are part of a broader trade war that has disrupted global markets and raised concerns about economic stability.
When we combine the previous tariffs on China with the new ones, their scope and severity are greater. This will undoubtedly lead to more supply chain relocations out of China.
China must also work hard to stabilize weak sectors like housing and consumer markets. In Germany, the consensus is to stay level-headed.
The future government, the future coalition will reform and invest in order to keep Germany stable, to make it safer and economically stronger again. Europe too can count on Germany.
We should, I think, react in a level-headed way. If we react too harshly now, as the Chinese are doing now, then there will be a backlash again. But it's quite difficult for the politicians now, it has to be said.
Germany is modernizing healthcare, boosting e-mobility and upgrading infrastructure. However, industrial output is down and Chinese competition is putting pressure on key sectors like automobile manufacturing. The Economic Brief, DD India. Germany and their economy hoping to recover under a new administration, but the tariffs might be pushing Chinese goods directly into Europe from the US. So, China's BYD, for instance, it's the automobile company which produces electric cars. It's producing twice as many cars as Volkswagen does. So, do you see the Chinese, struggling to find new markets?
Certainly. By the way, BYD has a lovely title, if you know what it means. Build your dreams, right? It's a great thing. Now, look what happens. You have, here you have to put the fault on the Americans. They have been pushing Europe into a corner by saying, don't buy gas from Russia because they are sanctioned. Don't buy fuel from Russia because there are sanctions on Ukraine. Now they're saying, don't do this with China because they're under sanctions. So who the hell are they going to buy from? Germany is one of the strongest economies in the world, the strongest industrial power that we have. If they can't have a deal with Chinese, which is the biggest market, they are not, they're not trading with Russia because of sanctions. And then you announce that we are not trading either. Where do they go?
Yes.
I see the Europeans slowly now not listening to the Americans anymore. It's a long history. Since the 80s, the Europeans have felt that the Americans have been exerting too much hegemony and making them give up. Now, Trump may be right about saying that the Ukraine is your problem, you pay for it. But then he should allow the Europeans to allow the economic instruments to pay for it. You can't say, we'll tell you how to spend, but you spend where, we'll tell you where to spend. That doesn't work. So I see Europe moving much closer to China. Maybe not Russia. Russia runs the economic cloud. I see that happening. But at the moment, the whole world, let me tell you, is going to be worrying about, and India very much so. Our Director General of Trade Remedy is going to be working overtime because this where do the Chinese go but elsewhere. And the problem is China not being a democracy. They are a very efficient producer. There's no doubt about it, even if you don't like them. And their goods have to find a market. Look at India. We want to keep the Chinese out for economic reasons. Perfectly okay. Safeguards and so anti-dumping. But you need the insulin.
Okay.
You need the power equipment. What are you going to do?
So there are lots of products that are absolutely essential that they come from China because they have their only supply chain.
I believe the Director General of Trade Remedies has his task cut out in India in the next.
So,
I still believe.
But Professor Pant, since we're talking about Germany, is the German economy fundamentally strong? Do you think? Okay. So it can get out of this recession. Do you see that they also need to increase exports, right? Where will they go?
Absolutely. But you can't. They are the most export dependent of all the European economies. Much more than France or Spain or anyone. They're the ones. They are the backbone of the EU. If tomorrow Germany collapses, the EU experiment is over. Let's be very clear about that. They are the backbone of Europe and they are the industrial power. Today, German electronics beat any electronics in the world. Even the German cars are technologically more efficient than any other car in the world. But you can't clip their wings, right? Their biggest trading partner has been China. And you're saying, no, you can't trade with China because China is now under sanctions and you put economic sanctions on China, you've got political sanctions on Russia. Where do they go? I mean, there's something in it for India, but India doesn't have the economic power to satisfy the demand there. I do believe they're going to improve the links with China, but slowly, because they've got their own problems.
Now, President Trump's 90-day pause on tariffs, and he's provided a baseline 10% for most countries, but the 125% for China. Some would argue, I mean, those in favor of Trump say that he has succeeded in bringing most of the countries to his side and he has isolated China. Would you agree with that?
I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all. Let me give you some numbers. And I've been writing extensively on this in various places. Today, the US, by the way, first of all, what he's talked about, Trump, and what he seems to understand is commodity trade. He doesn't understand trade in services. So we talk about only commodity trade. Today, the US accounts for only 13% of total world demand for commodity production. Let's add, say, another 3% because China has been routing its exports through Vietnam and through Mexico and so on. Let's add another 15 to 16%. 15 to 16% can't, the tail can't, wag the dog. So my point is these other countries have become very lazy. He should be very worried. He may actually make the Europeans start getting active. They've been very lazy. They have a lazy life. Good pensions, very little work. The laziest area in the world they can think about. If he wakes, you're waking up a sleeping giant. And I've got a feeling they are not going to believe him. Although I know that at the moment he's put a pause. And I do think he should have at least indicated in off-channel method that my problem is China, which I know it is. And I'm not going to enforce it, which is what he did last year. If you remember in 2016, he did exactly the same things.
Right.
And he put the sanctions on China, then he withdrew them. He told Mexico, sign agreement that you won't allow people to, it's as if the Mexican government doesn't tell people, please go and infiltrate into the US. So he cannot be driving it. And then he withdrew it. He did the same thing. But this time he feels that he's making it a personal thing. It's very dangerous.
Sure, but
For
you
any
see,
politician to take any issue personally is an absolute recipe for disaster. I believe the American people will give the answer because the Chinese can afford inflation, right? Who in China is going to tell Z that your things are getting expensive? What about it? Nothing. You just didn't plan it.
We're running short of time, Professor Pant, but a final word. You seem to be suggesting that there are an opportunity here for Europe and Germany in particular to probably renegotiate suitable trade deals, maybe with the US, maybe with China, maybe even with India. So what do you think? I mean, where do we all stand?
I think where we stand is that the WTO is now dead. It's been dead for a while because of the appellate authority. That's all. It will stay as a kind of a thing at the background. I think that these RTAs that we've been conducting, we'll do more of those. We shouldn't go crazy and do it in every single country that we think of, which is what seems to be happening. But certainly places like EU, the UK, maybe even China. It's worth thinking in terms of foreign investment coming in from China. After all, the Chinese are here, right? We don't like them, correct? But their phones are here.
Right.
Their insulin is here. Their power equipment is here. And if you, instead of trying to stop them at the port, why not let them come and construct? What can they do? They can't pick up the factory and go with it. So I believe restructuring of the world order is going to take place because a person like Trump is an unknown person, unguided missile, so to speak. So I do believe I think the future for India is bright, certainly.
Okay, the future of India is bright. We leave it on that note. Thank you very much, Professor Manoj Pant. Thank you for joining us and enlightening us on two of the major stories that we talked about today. Amravati, the capital of Andhra Pradesh, getting a boost after the relaunch of its development projects, as well as how Germany is handling a revival of its economy in the midst of all this tariff war. Let's move on to our next story, and this story is about cocoa. Cocoa prices are reaching unprecedented highs, and Nigeria is eager to position itself among the world's leading producers. While farmers are celebrating newfound profits, the rapid growth of the industry is also bringing along new challenges, from rising crime and theft to environmental concerns and complexities on scaling production. Diptanshu Kashyap reports.
In the heart of southwest Nigeria, cocoa farmers are experiencing a golden opportunity like never before. After years of navigating volatile markets, prices of cocoa, a key ingredient in chocolate, have surged to a record high of $12,000 per ton. This price boom offers life-changing profits, making Nigeria's cocoa industry a vital part of the economy. But with this opportunity comes new risks, and the stakes are higher than ever. According to a 2024 report by the Swiss Platform for Sustainable Cocoa, Africa accounts for 70% of the world's cocoa, with Ghana and Ivory Coast at the forefront, while Nigeria holds the fifth spot. While these top producers face challenges from climate change and disease, Nigeria has largely avoided these issues. Nigeria aims to move into the fourth place globally by 2025, producing 500,000 tons and challenging the dominance of its West African neighbors. This surge in cocoa prices has put Nigeria on the map as a rising contender in the global market. However, as cocoa farmers and exporters thrive, there is a growing concern. Farmers have become the target of armed gangs and crop thieves.
Not only farmers are being attacked, they attack even the exporters. As they are moving their cocoa beans from the warehouse to the port, there is tendency of attack. And people hijacking their vehicles because it's gold.
In a country where terror groups like Boko Haram remain the major focus on security forces, farmers have got little help from the authorities.
When we harvest between October and December, kidnappers abduct farmers in the forest, demanding ransom. Some pay 10 million naira, sometimes 5 million naira in ransom. Some farmers end up killed.
The rapid expansion of cocoa farming also raises environmental concerns, as monocropping threatens biodiversity and local ecosystems. With this growth, Nigeria faces critical choices about balancing profitability with sustainability, decisions that will shape the future of its cocoa industry. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for the Economic Brief, DD India.
Thank you very much for watching the Economic Brief. Namaskar.